Welcome to Sports CTO Talks. In today's episode, we will explore the invisible 99. Can AI decode what traditional football data misses? I am Ami, your guide on this journey through the mind of tech leaders who are shaping the future of sports and technology. We would be connecting with industry leaders and understand the journey. We will dive deep into discussions driving the industry from AI to cloud, from cybersecurity to sustainability. If it is sports tech, we are talking about it. Today, we are joined by Dr. Tobias Haupt. I hope I have pronounced your name correctly.
You have.
He is the CEO of Gamecode AI, a company that leverages AI and position skeleton data to analyze football, uncovering hidden off the ball movements and decisions. Their clients include top tier leagues such as the Premier League, the Bundesliga, the La Liga, and MLS. From 2018 to 2024, Tobias has led DFB Academy, implementing reforms such as new football coach training programs, integrating the next technology and innovation programs into the German soccer, and collaborating closely with national teams. He has also earned his PhD in 2014, focusing more on the ways of monetizing through social media marketing in professional football. We welcome you, Tobias, to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation, and it's great to be here.
Absolutely. So, my first question is, traditional stats only capture the on-ball events, but there are companies like Stats Perform and Opta. They claim over 65% of decisive match actions happen off the ball. So, right from the start, what percentage of true match influence is actually invisible in standard databases?
So, very good question at the beginning, and it's this is very hard to quantify, but you can do simply mathematics, and I would say that are a few thousands decisions that are taking place in every single match in soccer and in any other sports as well, but especially in soccer, that are not covered yet by the current statistics. And the reason is, as you already mentioned, most of the statistics, they simply focus on the action with the ball. But in soccer, you have 21 other players that are on the pitch at the same moment, and they are all doing decisive stuff or actions for the game. So they all influence the game by running, by pre-orientating, by communicating and all that stuff. But this isn't reflected or hasn't been reflected by the current statistics. And that is exactly the reason why there is just limited knowledge in the current statistics, because you lose a lot of things if you just take the statistics that are available currently, because they only describe what happens with the ball. But the decisive things for coaches, for sporting directors, for scouts, are that, let's call it, invisible things that are happening on the pitch. And to measure this was our approach 6 years ago. And we succeeded in trying to measure this. And now we are, for the very first time, able to measure things like game intelligence, decision making on the pitch. So what's decisive for a lot of crucial things in professional soccer.
Okay. So when you're talking about, understanding the decisions, so what happens if players are off the ball roughly, like, up roughly 87 minutes per match? So how many micro decisions are current event-based analytic models missing per game? And what does, what happens and how to go about it?
Yeah, so there is a very good example. We know that a soccer match takes around 90 minutes. Even more net playing time is less. We know that, but let's say 90 minutes, a player in average has around 90 seconds the ball. So if you just evaluate a player what he is doing during that 90 seconds, you lose the other 88.5 minutes, and he is doing, as I already said, crucial things there as well. And just to give you an example, if you take passing accuracy as a good example, it's quite simple. So if you have a player who has a 100% passing accuracy, that doesn't tell you anything about would there have been better passing options he didn't choose, or he didn't see, or he didn't want to play. And there is nothing in that 100% passing accuracy if he had created a big impact for his team or for the game. But that is what it is all about. Or take the example of duels. If you have a defender, for example, who has won 100% of his duels, that doesn't tell you anything. Which duels he has prevented because of he did the right run, or he had a good space control on the pitch. All that stuff that is decisive for evaluating a player or a team performance is not reflected in the current statistics. And that is exactly why we decided to found Gamecode. And the reason for that was just a few sentences that all the coaches we were talking to, and you described that I was leading the DFB Academy for 6 years. I talked to a lot of coaches and was responsible for the coaches' education in Germany. And they were basically all complaining about the same stuff. And that was, I cannot measure my individual game philosophy in soccer because I get preset metrics or KPIs from the providers, but as soon as I want to integrate my own understanding of football, let's call it a secret sauce, why I signed the next contract, there is no provider who can deliver me that, and that is Gamecode AI.
Correct. So why do the conventional metrics is like, the goals, the assists, the possessions, the pass completion, they still dominate, and how still dominate how we evaluate the players. So when they are clearly missing most of what's happening, what to do in that case?
So there are many reasons for that. First reason is that just measuring the outcome is quite simple and easy to understand. So to evaluate the player, how many duels he has won, or how many assists he has created, or how many goals he has scored is quite simple. But measuring all that, let's call it invisible stuff, or just people see who are very well educated and experienced, that is even harder. And another reason is that the availability of that big amount of data we have now these years gives you for the very first time the opportunity to measure all that you were not able to measure before. But now comes the problem or the challenge, decoding that data. And I'm talking about the raw data, so the ground truth in data science. To decode that kind of data is really hard. So it took us around 3 years to create the first results. And now imagine you're in a decisive position or in a leadership position in professional soccer. These clubs or associations, they try to survive every 3 days or every 4 days. So they do not have the time at all to spend 3 or 4 years to develop such stuff. So and that is the reason why it's still the same statistics we have been using in the last 10 or 15 years. And one more point that is really crucial is that you have to have a combination of the best data scientists and best mathematicians
Yes.
and best software developers on the one hand, and on the other hand, the best coaches and the best sporting directors who ask the right questions, and both parties have to understand each other's. And I think you know very well how football coaches or soccer coaches, which personalities they have. And I'm sure you know data scientists and mathematicians, which personalities they bring to the table. These are completely different worlds. And to find a constellation where both sides match is quite difficult. We succeeded in doing that, but for clubs or professional sports associations, that's nearly impossible.
Okay. So when you're talking about impossible, in systems like, Guardiola's positional play or the Klopp's G-gen pressing, so how misleading does it actually get when you evaluate players using the isolated statistics instead of the system-based impact?
Yeah, that's quite misleading because, as I already said, you're just focusing on the output. But especially in soccer, you have so many event sequences happening before the output happens, and these event sequences are decisive. So, of course, everybody realizes that Ronaldo, Messi, Haaland, or Mbappe are outstanding players. Everybody can see it. But what you don't see at first glance is which players in their background in the team are securing the space or are defending even more because they are not defending. So all that stuff you're missing when you only have a look on the output, and seeing that unseen things, as I already said, are decisive for finding the right talents because everybody is looking for that. I call it whispering talents. So the talents that do, yeah, surprising stuff on the pitch, other players don't do, but you cannot see it with your naked eye. And the decisive thing here is that there is so much potential in that 99% of data that hasn't been evaluated yet, that this is the part of the business where the most potential lies in. And a lot of people or decision makers have realized this, but most of them are focusing on the classical business stuff like fan engagement, broadcasting, internal processes, and all that stuff. But to answer the question holistically, how AI can improve the performance of the players and the teams on the pitch, how I can improve my decisions in the sporting department, how can I create a decisive competitive advantage through my individual scouting list, because I'm not looking on the scouting list that everybody else is using. I've created my own scouting list, like the Moneyball example 20 years ago. This question's a question most of the people haven't answered yet, and this is exactly the market gap where Gamecode AI is focusing on.
Okay. There is a basic question. How do you quantify something like football intelligence? The reading of spaces, the pressing triggers, the defense shaping, when a player isn't directly involved with the ball.
Yeah, that's really hard. But so what you have to do is one of our first slogans 1.5 year ago when we officially founded the company was Decode the game. So what we are doing is putting the game into very granular slices and then reflect those slices algorithmically. So that sounds really technical right now, but what we are doing is we try to measure the event sequences. So if you take soccer, you have that game competency model that consists of 3 different parts. It's orientation or decision making and execution. And if you want to focus on game intelligence, you have to focus on perception and decision making, because the most talented players, they see more on the pitch than every other player, and they take better and faster decisions than all of the other players. And then you can measure this, because I can give you an example. Let's take the second balls. So if you have a long ball, you have a header, the ball is flying, and then the ball will touch the floor or the ground or the pitch. You can measure where the ball will drop down with the highest probability. And then you can measure how strong every single player gets oriented into that certain space. So which space does he control most and first? And by measuring this, all of a sudden you're in the field of decision making, because then you can measure how fast and how good were the decision every single player was making in this concrete situation. But in order to be able to do that, you have to use event data combined with tracking data and combined with skeleton tracking data, and you have to have your own algorithm. Let's call it a metric. We call it a second ball metric, that measures exactly this specific sequence of events. And if you do that, you're able to measure what most of the people would call game intelligence.
Okay. So can, space creation, the tracking defenders, the opening pass lines, shifting defense blocks, ever become a standardized, measurable statistic? Is it possible?
It already is. So
Okay.
space control is the statistic in our models that is basically is the basis for most of our metrics. So space control tells you a lot. Box coverage, how big distances are between the lines, how much space you allow. So these are already statistics we have created, but the development is still young. So it will take time until everybody uses these metrics, until everybody is aware of those metrics. But for me, it's sure that in the next years we will see a shift from the traditional, easy to understand metrics to that more complex metrics. And the challenge for us is who would try to kind of educate decision makers or give them additional tools to take better decisions. How can we transport that quite complex metrics in an easy, understandable way? Because our goal is not to make things complicate or overcomplicate or over scientific stuff. We want to make it easy, and we want to make it explainable, and we want the decision makers to be able to take better decisions.
Okay. When you talk about decision makers, what is the fundamental difference between event-based data and the tracking-based data, and how, and why does the shift matter so much?
So let's formulate it as simple as possible. Event data means you have human beings sitting either in the stadium or in front of a television screen and watching the game several times and taking notes by hand when some things happen. For example, a goal is scored, a corner kick happens, a duel happens, and all that stuff. So event statistics is just describing what happens. Tracking data is calculated by camera systems. So there are expensive camera systems installed in most of the professional leagues in the big stadiums. And they're tracking 25 times a second every single player where he is on the pitch. So by combining now what is happening on the pitch and where it is happening, and bringing it into context of the sequence of the game, all of a sudden you can explain things. So you can not only describe why has the right winger attacked, or you cannot only describe a winger has attacked the space behind the last line of defense. You can now describe, if you take the tracking data and bring it together with the right metrics, why he has attacked the space, and has he created value for his team or for the success of the game or whatever. So the bringing in that layer of tracking data, you bring in the context of the game, and you make things that happened explainable.
Okay. So how important is the contextual data when you're talking about the tracking data? The contextual data like the score line, the opponent strength, the tactical phase, and when interpreting any of these metrics, is how important is that?
That's decisive for everybody, because if you lose or if you do not integrate that context, you will take that average decision every decision maker at the moment, or most of the decision makers at the moment are taking, because they're all looking at the same statistics from the providers, at the same scouting list. So you do not have a competitive advantage. The competitive advantage you can create is if you bring in the context of the game and the context of your individual game philosophy. I can give you an example. If you want to transfer a player, for example, because you realize your fullback is not as strong and has some weaknesses in several metrics of your game philosophy, you want to scout exactly the fullback that brings in that strength your fullback before hasn't had. But you won't find that strength in the current statistics, because that strength you're looking for are very specific. So you have to create your own positional profile, and then scout for exactly that profile. And if you do not bring that into context, which players you already have in your squad, and which coach you have, and which game philosophy he wants to see on the pitch, you will have a big probability that you transfer players, or you sign players that do not fit at all to your game philosophy, and that do not fit at all to their teammates. We have so many examples, even in the highest leagues in professional soccer, where you see that that teams have, for example, a lot of players who are able to run behind the last line of defense, but they have no quarterback who is able to realize that there is an opportunity to play the ball behind the last line of defense. And that is exactly what GameCode AI is all about. And we are the first that bring in that contextual data, and even more, that give the clubs and the coaches and the scouts the opportunity to bring that data in the context of their individual game philosophy.
Okay. So, to what extent can AI bridge this gap between the raw tracking data and the real football intelligence, especially in the complex systems like the pressing structures, the positional play?
Completely. So AI is the key to bridge that gap, especially in two fields. So the one field is that the amount of data is getting so big. So you have to take into consideration that in a football or in a soccer match at the World Cup at the moment, there is over 150 million data points collected per game. So the amount of data is exploding, and you have to use AI tools in order to decode that data, because otherwise it would take weeks or months that you will get results. So AI is the key to decode that data. And on the other hand, the challenge is that, and I hope it's not too technical, but you have, for football coaches or for the practitioners, things have to be easy, because they do not have the time, they do not have the scientific background. Everything has to be easy. So at the end, the solution must be that you talk to the data. And we have exactly developed this as Gamecode AI. We have developed the first soccer chatbot that answers you questions deeply based on every data that has ever been collected in professional soccer. And you get really, really deep answers regarding your individual game philosophy. And you can only develop such a highly individual chatbot if you use AI tools. Otherwise, this wouldn't have been possible.
Okay. So are modern recruitment models, still missing the elite talent because they rely too heavily on, the visible output metrics instead of the underlying performance indicators?
Definitely, yes. And what you described now is exactly the reason why talent development or even talent identification at the moment is not very fair, because you're still, as a talent, dependent on that there is a scout standing on the pitch, that the scout is educated and he sees the right things and he tries to see the right things, and but it's not fair. So democratizing talent development and following the slogan of FIFA, for example, who keeps saying, give every talent a chance. If you think it until the end, the solution would be quite simple. You just have to install cameras on every pitch, on every soccer pitch in the world, and collect the data. And we are able to do that at the moment already. And every time a over talented player steps onto the pitch and does stuff that reflects game intelligence, for example, he gets identified. So you cannot lose any talent anymore if you do it automatically, and if you use AI and if you collect the data. But we are still far away from that. But I'm completely convinced that this will come in the nearest future, that the big associations take the responsibility and install cameras and try to democratize talent development through AI tools.
Okay. So beyond, evaluation, can AI generated movement and positioning data actually feedback into individualized training programs? Designing the sessions around specific off-ball patterns and decision-making gaps a player needs to fix. Can it happen? Is it happening? And how is it
Yes,
benefiting?
definitely, and thanks a lot for bringing that up, because that is a really, really big gap at the moment in the whole business, because of what we were talking about now in the last minutes was official matches. So the tracking data availability, skeleton tracking data availability is only there at the moment for official matches. But as a coach or as a sporting director, you want to track the individual development of every single player in every single training session. But the problem at the moment is that the camera systems in the big stadiums are way too expensive for training pitches. So what we did over 1 year ago, we developed a software based on really, really cheap security cameras that is able to calculate the tracking data and even skeleton tracking data out of these very cheap cameras. And now we are able to calculate that data, working together with, as you said, big Premier League clubs, with big clubs in the US and the Bundesliga, even in Spain and Switzerland. And these clubs, they are collecting for the very first time with our software tracking and skeleton tracking data for training. So all of a sudden, you cannot only measure the output at the game of the players, you can measure the development of every single player in every single training session. You can compare the players. And now comes the point. Based on your individual game philosophy, based on your individual set of metrics. And this is completely new. And from my point of view, this is a game changer in the whole industry, because all of a sudden you can make it really objective how good a player is performing in the game and how good he is developing himself during the week and during the year in training sessions.
Okay. And when we talk, or when it comes to youth development, can tracking data identify a 16-year-old's spatial intelligence and pressing behavior before their technical skills, have fully matured? And essentially, is the scouting for potential football intelligence rather than the current output.
Yeah, yes, again, definitely, because you have to take into consideration that game intelligence things. So players or kids that are understanding the game, but for example, are not grown up enough, or not big enough, or not strong enough, or a little bit retarded, whatever. So all that things you cannot see with your naked eye, that is the secret sauce, because game intelligence and understanding the game, if you do not learn it in the early years, you will not learn it in the future. But if you understand the game from the very beginning, if you take the right decisions from the very beginning on the pitch, the technical stuff you can learn in the future. The physical stuff you can add when you're a little bit older. But again, understanding the game is the decisive thing, and you can identify talents and even young kids that already understand the game better than everybody else, better through data and AI than through traditional scouts, because a lot of scouts, they're just focusing on what you can see. So they're focusing on the output, but seeing the unseen, identifying the unseen, that's really hard. And data and AI in special gives you the opportunity to see exactly this.
Okay. There are clubs, like Ajax, RB Leipzig, and Manchester City, and multiple others have built entire development philosophies around specific movements and position principles. So, is the next frontier using AI to access how well a young player's learning curve aligns with the club's tactical DNA before they are, even broken into senior football players?
Yes, definitely. And this is exactly what the big organizations are doing at the moment. They are building, let's call it the heart of their club. It's their game philosophy. It's their educational philosophy. They are building it up as a tool of algorithms, a metrics tool. They're building that up on game code on our platform. And then they use it for the scouting of for talents. Even they're starting in Premier League, they're starting pretty early. They're starting at 8 or 9 years. Even 7-year-old kids are getting scouted at the moment. So they're using that set of KPIs. They use it for the talent development. So they are creating the development path, the player development path internally. With that set of KPIs, they are deciding which players they do not bring into the next age group, which players they have to substitute, and which players have the potential to make it up to the first team. So it's the heart of a club, and everything they're doing is directly linked and connected to that game philosophies that they have created.
Tobias, one last question. Like, if the majority of match influence is invisible in traditional stats, how should football fundamentally redefine what performance means in the AI era?
It will completely be redefined, because all of a sudden performance gets measurable, because everybody is talking about performance. But if you ask the question, yeah, but how do you define the performance, and how do you define performance on the team level and a player level? You will get several and different answers. And for a lot of people, performance is simply, do you win or lose, or do you score a lot of goals or not? But that's not performance. And as I already said, performance is highly individual, and everybody defines it different. And using AI and using our tool, Gamecode AI, all of a sudden you can measure not only performance objectively, you can measure it completely individually, so that your understanding, your individual understanding of soccer is represented in the results.
Okay, we'll move on to the next segment. That's the rapid fire round. I'll ask you a few questions and you'll have to be quick in answering.
Do I have to choose one, or can I take both if you have several
You
answers?
can choose both also, but you have to select. Okay. And
Okay,
it has to be
good.
quick.
Yes, go for it.
Who's your favorite football player of all time?
Franz Beckenbauer.
Okay. If you had to take him for dinner, where would it be?
Sorry again.
If you had to take him for dinner, where would it be?
Unfortunately, he has passed away. But if he would still be alive, I would take him in a very beautiful German Bavarian beer garden, because I know that he loved that a lot, and I think that is the very personal circumstance he would have loved.
Okay. Next question. Human scout or AI analysis?
Official answer would be both, but my personal opinion is AI Scout, because that gives you the opportunity that traditional Scout doesn't have.
Okay. Goals or expected goals?
Definitely goals, because that is what football is or soccer is all about. And expected goals is one way to measure the way to the goals, but I would stay with the goals.
Okay. On ball skill or off ball intelligence?
Definitely off-ball intelligence, because if, as already said, if you don't have that, all the on-ball skills are not enough.
Live insights or post match analysis?
Definitely life insights. And for the
Okay.
very first time, we were able to do that. And if I see the faces of the coaches who use the tools for the very first time, that's crazy how they like it.
Data driven decisions or coaching instinct?
You need to have both to be successful,
Yes.
but right now I would say data-driven decisions, because that's the area where you have the biggest potential to create decisive competitive advantage.
Okay. We'll move on to the next segment. You'll just have to answer one question into 30 seconds.
Okay.
What is the invisible 99%? Can AI decode what traditional football data misses?
Yes, definitely. So the 99% you cannot see with the naked eye is, as I described, perception, decision making. So what is happening on the pitch with all the other players who don't have the ball at the moment? One player has the ball, and even training sessions that are not reflected in the current statistics yet, and all that together is reflected in that 99%.
Thank you, Tobias, for your time coming on the podcast and sharing wonderful insights on the topic.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It was great to talk to you, and yeah, see you soon.
Absolutely. So, everyone, let's stay connected for more understanding on sports and technology. If you have any questions related to the topic, please feel free to comment in the section. Either Tobias or I will get back to you answering all the questions. So, let's stay in touch. We will meet in the next episode next time. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, keep exploring.